Hello everyone, my name is the RetroDan and today I'm here to talk about the PS2. Most specifically, PS2 games I think should be getting platinum trophies and remakes on the PS5. If you have been keeping up with the PS Store and the Classics collection, you know that most recently PlayStation started putting out PS2 games with platinum trophies. And they're working on porting some of the catalog from the PS2 into the PS5. It's more than clear that we aren't getting half the games we want to get from the good old PS2 era, which me and many others grew up with. So today I'm here to talk about some of my favorite games and games that I think deserve a port to the PS5 and maybe some trophies to spice up every trophy hunter's life and catalog. So without further ado, these are PS2 games that deserve platinum trophies in 2024. Starting by a fighting arena game that a lot of people probably didn't play, which is called Digimon Rumble Arena. Digimon Rumble Arena was a game I played a lot, even though I wasn't a big Digimon fan. It had unique mechanics in which you could evolve your characters mid-game with the pickup on the arena, and it honestly just looked very charming. Now, I put this game first on the list because I know very little about Digimon and I just know I absolutely loved this game for some reason, so since it's the game I have the least to speak about, this is the one I'm going to put on the list first. Heading into our second game, we are starting with the games I actually know things about, which is Sonic Riders Zero Gravity. Now, if you don't know anything about Sonic and you don't know what Sonic Riders is, you probably have missed a lot in the PS2 era. Sonic Riders was the spin-off series of Sonic in which everyone had hoverboards and they were riding around in amazing tracks with an amazing soundtrack to back it up. These were amazing games that everybody who had loved, and they featured a huge amount of races with a campaign and customizable options which you could play for hours and hours on end. The tracks were very unique along with, as I already mentioned, the soundtracks, and they made for a blast of a combination of a Sonic game that featured speed in the non-normal Sonic way that you were used to with games like Sonic Adventure, Adventure 2 and Sonic Heroes, which were the main 3D Sonic games we have had until that time. Staying with the racing ideas, I have Outrun 2006 Coast to Coast, which is my favorite game of the PS2 of all time. Now, if you don't know the Outrun franchise, this is a Sega game, which is a racing game that's arcadish and is focused on drifting and getting through the beautifully crafted stages. Now, Outrun 2006 Coast to Coast is a very unique Sega racing game since it's licensed by Ferrari and only features Ferrari cars. The drifting mechanics in this game are top notch, and I remember even playing it recently on the PS2. This is probably one of the most stable games in terms of frame rate, and that looks the best out of my entire collection, which is quite a pretty big one. So this is a game I would love to see ported to new consoles since it already looked good back then and had a stable frame rate, and I can imagine that nowadays it would look even better running ported up to the PS5 if it didn't have any kind of input delay or something like that. Right after that, we're going back to Sonic with one of the best games that was released on the PS2 for Sonic as well, which is Sonic Heroes. Now, if you don't know what Sonic Heroes is, it's the main 3D game that came after Sonic Adventures 2, which features groups of 3 characters which are called teams inside of the game, going through stages and completing a normal Sonic-like story. Now, this game was very unique. It had an amazing soundtrack with amazing gameplay that some people liked, some people didn't, but I think most people who played it when it was released really enjoyed it, and I think this is one of the games that we are actually missing a port of. Since Sonic Adventures 1 and 2 are already ported to Steam, we already got a remake of Sonic Generations, so why not get a Sonic Heroes port on the PS5 so we could finally get to play this again without having to emulate it. Now, for the next game we have a weird one that most of you probably haven't heard about, but I remember very fondly, which is the Chronicles of Narnia: The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. Now, I have very fond memories of this game as an adventure game because it had a very intense kind of gameplay. The maps were very unique, you went through the story of one of the Chronicles of Narnia movies, and it had very different environments and it was kind of different from everyone I had played until then. I honestly don't know what captured me so much about this game, but I think it was clearly the very well made level design, which made every level a blast to go through since it had some pretty good exploration and mechanics to pair it up with that made the game very enjoyable overall. Now, you know that I have to fit a Star Wars game in here because as the Star Wars fan in here, I have to put a Star Wars game in every list I make, and for this video I'm choosing, of course, Star Wars 3 Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith. Now, this is one of my favorite movies, and I actually loved this game when I used to play with my cousin. It's a unique game that also features scenes that were cut from the game itself that had different endings for the Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith movie, and it's just an hack and slash action game that you play throughout the entirety of Episode 3. It's a blast to go through, and it's a basic game that has Star Wars action with lightsabers and force abilities, and it takes you throughout one of the best, if not the best, Star Wars movie. If you want to, of course, be a prequels hater, do so, but this was an amazing game when it came out, and playing through Episode 3 as Anakin and Obi-Wan and being able to revisit the movie in a game was very, very good, and I would love for this game to get ported to PS5, as it was one of my favorites, even liking it more than The Force Unleashed, which also released for PS2, even though I played it on the PC and on the PSP. I think this one would be a must if they were going to port any other Star Wars game. Next up, we have a game that's really good when it comes to movie games as well, and I'm talking about Simpsons Hit and Run. Now, this game is usually known as the Simpsons GTA for a good reason. You have kind of a small open world in which you can go around as Homer and cause a lot of havoc, and you also can explore, you can beat up everything and steal cars and everything like that. You can also buy cars and collect different things. You have to go through the main missions of the campaign of the game, but other than that, it's a more childish GTA game with the Simpsons theme, which a lot of people who played back then enjoyed it, since the Simpsons were a very, and still are a very well-known and famous franchise, which make for very good game opportunities. Now, I could have put here Simpsons the Game, which was also and probably a better game than Simpsons Hit and Run, but I think this one would be a good spin for all of the GTA fans who maybe could want something different to try and platinum, because this can be quite a hard game at times with some harder missions towards the end. So I think this would be a better fit for a trophy type of game. Last but not least, I'm hitting you with the weirdest game I could pick out of my collection, which was a game I, for some reason, also loved, which is Mercury Meltdown Remix. Now, what the hell is Mercury Meltdown Remix? This game is a puzzle game in which you play as these little amoebas or blobs, which are different colors, and you have to take them throughout these very weirdly crafted puzzles in order to reach the end of them. And you have to mix with the levels mechanics and change around the blobs colors so they can fit certain doors and go through certain doors to reach the end of the levels. But this was one of the most unique games I've ever played, and ever since I played it back on the PS2, I have never seen anything like it, and I think this would be very cool to have as a trophy game that was ported from the PS2. It would be something like the Loco Roco 1 and 2 ports, which a lot of people seem to don't pay a lot of attention to when they're talking about platinum trophies, and I love when PlayStation ports these small little franchises which maybe weren't too known in the West, but get another chance at life and attention on newer generations, so I'd love to see this game ported to PS5. And these were the games I decided to include in this list. I think it was quite a unique list that you guys could enjoy. As for PS2 games that could be ported to the PS5, and let me hear what games you think the PS team should port from the PS2 to the PS5, or emulate, however you want to call it, and what games you would like to see getting a trophy list. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Subscribe if you haven't taken the time to subscribe yet, and if you want to keep up with the new videos we are releasing. Leave a like if you have a second of your time to do so. But other than that, this has been the RetroDan, and I'm out.